My mom faked cancer for 2 years when I was in high school. Even shaved her head and everything. Haven't spoke to her in 12 years. She disgusts me. I'm sorry you had to go through all of that. But what was the reason for faking a deadly disease for 2 years? Edit grammar. When I was 3 I slammed my door. They took the door off the hinges and refused to ever put it back. We had to move to a different house before I got a door. Over a decade later. And I had to move out before I had a door with a lock. I would never destroy my kids' privacy like that. My girlfriend always comes and stays at my place, but I found out she doesn't have a lock and her parents will walk in while she's changing, so I went and installed a locking handle. My parents couldn't talk to each other after they got divorced, so they used me as a message board. Tell you mother. Double quote. You tell your father. Double quote. Fucking grow up and talk to each other. My parents split up around 28 or 29 years ago and still won't talk to each other. I'm dreading the day when me or a sibling gets married or something where they are both there. I'll spend the entire time waiting for them to have an argument about something. Edit. 18 or 19 years ago. My dad yelled at me for complaining about my broken arm. I didn't know it was broken at the time. And he just screamed at me to stop whining about the pain. I was 10 at the time. Still mad about that. I would never be so short-tempered with my kids. And actually listen to them when they say something is wrong. My whole life I've heard there's nothing wrong with you. Whenever I heard broke my finger, there's nothing wrong with you. I even got into trouble for that one. So now I'm 34 and lived with acute pancreatitis for a year, unbearable pain, because I was afraid that the doctor would say the same thing my parents always did. I could have died. Comparing my grades successes with my siblings. I feel like it can be really disheartening and discouraging for the one that doesn't perform as well. My father does this. I f***ing hate it. All it does is make me feel like the lesser child. My ex-stepdad had no issues punishing me and my brother in questionable ways. I have a scar on my back from when he took a branch that was on fire from our fire pit and would whack the hell out of me with it. One time he also pinned me down and would let my sister repeatedly punch me in the nose because I apparently had upset her. I remember one time our deep freeze got left open and all the meat thawed and he would whip me and my brother until one of us confessed. Turns out it was him after all during a drunk night and he wanted something to eat. If my dad found out I had a crush on a girl, he'd tease me and make me feel embarrassed about it. Made me feel like I could never go to him for advice on girls. My parents did this to the point I struggle to talk to girls. Even though I make fun of me in front of company. It wasn't malicious, just thoughtless. Now my mom always complains that I don't tell her anything. I literally told her once this is why I don't tell you things and it was like she never considered that I might not want everyone and their brother to know my personal business. Not explaining to my 12-year daughter about woman period. My mum gave me a girl book and left it at that. No pads or emergency period pack. I'm still not entirely sure how I got pads at 13. I do remember still being embarrassed buying sanitary items at 16. Ask for money. Especially now knowing how much my mother spends on pointless things and then wonders why they don't ever have money. Just annoying and I don't feel bad anymore. My father bust his ass to make money and she just blows it all. Physical abuse. Mental and verbal abuse. My mother and stepfather commented on my body a lot. And most importantly, I would never sexually molest my children. OMG, I'm sorry there are such terrible people. You are okay now, Hopperfully? Refusing to accept that my child has feelings. Every f***ing time I'm criticized for playing games and enjoying my time. You fell down, because of that phone la. Always play. No study meh? Double quote. Asian parents. Chose drugs over me. Left me with a babysitter that molested me for years. Choke slammed me to the ground. Dropped a knee in my chest, fracturing my sternum. Tried to fight me for my smartest mouth. Those are just a few gems of my wonderful childhood. Damn dude. That sucks. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Hope all is well for you now. Teach them that the only acceptable way to live is the way they do. Grew up with some serious judgmental thoughts about people different from me that are still hard to drive out. I hear you. It's like logically you know it to be untrue. But there are deep-seated ideas my parents planted that are just hard to kick. Most of mine are religious things. Mum's an absolute psycho, so basically everything different. If I didn't wake up for school at a specific time, she would beat me up and throw me out the house with no lunch. So yeah. Childhood at home was no fun. Knock. Please always knock. Also don't just knock while you're in the midst of opening the door. That doesn't count. Knock. Wait for a response. Then come in. Not only for when you're doing things you don't want your parents to do, but also just allows the kid to feel a lot more private in their room, knowing you respect that boundary. My parents disowned me 7.5 years ago. I would never ever disown my 2 boys. Severely restrict video games. My parents didn't grow up with them, so they viewed video games as dumb. Or at worst, bad for you. Why they'd be worse than watching TV, I don't know. It just killed me to not be able to even use my own money to buy NES. Still stings today when I think about that. My kids and I have a blast today. My mom's logic. Playing video games damages the TV. Bullshit. Mom. Both the console and TV was from the same company. Make me go to bed every single day at 7:30 p.m. Do you go to bed at a reasonable hour now? I didn't have a strict bedtime as a kid and I tend to stay up way too late as an adult. Make my daughter feel insecure about her looks or feel that her entire worth is tied to her looks. My mom's an attractive woman. I took a lot of my looks from my dad's side of the family and she made it no secret that she felt they weren't attractive people. She would compare my looks to other girls. I was an awkward teen. She didn't like how my hair is more afro texture, or how I put on makeup. It took my husband to help me to realize that I didn't need makeup to be pretty. Girls go enough insecurity about their looks. I won't be the one to make it worse. Stay out of my kids' business. My parents weren't controlling at all, but they were nosy and I've always been a very private person. I felt like I couldn't live any kind of life when I lived with them, because they'd pry and ask me questions. If my kids don't feel like sharing some detail of their life with me, I'm not going to pry unless I think it's hurting them in some way. They would never and still never apologize. Even if they did something wrong. They are always right and will argue tooth and nail. The sky is not blue, it's green. So stop arguing with me right now. Boomer mentality that you can't appear weak and being or admitting you're wrong makes you weak. When I was a kid I rarely was allowed to see friends outside of school. Could be part of the reason I'm socially awkward sometimes now. My parents did this to me. I can barely keep a conversation going nowadays. They put hidden microphones all over my room, basement and probably some other places too. I discovered them when my mom kept on calling me when I used the family computer, probably suspecting me of watching inappropriate stuff. She also searches my phone every night when she thinks I am sleeping. I don't have kids yet, but when I do I would never do that and teach my kids to respect their kids' privacy too. And if you are wondering, I am 15, only a few more years until I move out. Other than this my mom is pretty nice, so yeah, she just needs to respect my privacy. Not having kids. But tell them it's bad to like the same gender, or tell them they have to grow up and stop watching cartoons playing with toys. Fuck you both. I live with my boyfriend and all the toys I missed out on because I was too old. Socially isolate them or avoid family get-togethers. I wouldn't tell them not to do something or to do something without explaining to them why. I wouldn't scream or shout at them over the pettiest of things. I got invited to many birthday parties, but we only went to one and none after that because I was embarrassing my mom. I was 8. I wish I could say I did not repeat any of the horrible stuff my caregivers did to me. My son was taken away from me by the state, with just cause, and raised in foster care. What I did not do was gaslight him or blame the victim. I let him know what I did was very wrong and he did nothing to cause being treated that way. I told him that telling his teacher was a good, healthy thing and I was proud of him for doing it. I let him know that I did love him very much but I was broken in a way that means I cannot be the very good mommy he deserves. That was the very least I owed him. To not play with his mind and make him think it was his fault. Compare me to my sister. We were and are vastly different through every stage of life. Just because you preferred her way of life growing up, she was a straight A. Smart. Mostly obedient child. I was a go fast. Impulsive. Later pothead. I don't know. Being compared rather than loving me for who I was hurt. My mom later apologized for doing this after we got older. But I won't forget feeling like oh, she doesn't like me. But would if I was like Lisa. Never tell your children why can't you be more like your sister brother? Double quote. Punish them because they're part of support the LGBTQ+ community. Sorry you had to go through that. I was told, at 15, that bisexuality was a phase. Coming up to 10 years later, they still make homophobic, transphobic and biphobic comments in front of me and expect it to have no effect. Not sure if you ever plan to have kids, but I'm sure you will be the best thing that ever happens to them. Abandon them. Furthermore, I wouldn't pretend like I had cancer to abandon them either. Take your door off the hinges. It's a complete violation of privacy and just doesn't make sense to me. You're going to expose me to the whole rest of the house for what? It teaches you nothing. I won't let them stay up until 3 AM. That's for sure. My parents were on the opposite end and I had unreasonably early bedtimes until I went to college. I think I'm going to be more lenient without completely abolishing a bedtime. Gaslighting. All the other bullshit that happened aside. The blatant gaslighting. We never said that. We don't know what you're talking about. Sorry. Don't remember that. It lingers and builds resentment and kills any respect that's left. I hate to say it. Because I honestly hate gaslighting. But once in a while I will do it back to them if and when we talk and I feel no remorse. I grew up in a racist home in the South. Blacks were subhumans fit only for manual labor. My class in high school was the first to integrate and that started opening my eyes. College helped further and then I went to work at a chemical company alongside some very fine black engineers and managers. I still count them among my friends even though I'm now retired. Proud to say that my kids did not grow up in a racist home. My mother did two things that bother me. First, she'd become irrational if she got angry and cannot to this day admit when she's wrong. Second, she'd do things like tell me not to lie. And then I'd catch her in a lie. So she did not practice what she preached. Promised myself I'd never do either of those if I had a kid. Promise kept. Give all their attention to my brother with special needs and essentially let me raise myself. An ex's roommate was like this. His mother got HIV and he was born without it. But his sister was. She was given all the attentions and funds while he was mostly ignored and left to his own devices. He says she's a spoiled asshole who always gets her way and he always felt like an outcast in his own family. Have too many kids and expect the older kids to take care of the younger kids instead of being able to have an actual childhood. We weren't allowed to use the front door. Wear shoes in the house. Leave a light on more than 30 seconds. Talk back at all, to the point there really were no conversations. I was an overweight child. My mom used to say you would be so pretty if you lost weight. She would also restrict food. My parents were divorced so when I went to my dad's I would binge because he didn't restrict or talk about my weight. I still to this day have an unhealthy relationship with food. I will never ever talk about my daughter's weight in that manner. Gaslight them. I own my mistakes and have apologized to my kids for losing my temper, etc. My folks are most 70 and still deny their shitty ways. I would never punish my kids by not feeding them. That was my parents' go-to since they didn't believe in hitting us. My mom used to lock me in our unfinished basement as a kid. Whenever I did something bad, As a 8-12-year-old that shit was terrifying. I think what sucks the most is now that I'm 25 and have a 2-year-old. Whenever I joke about it to my mom, she insists she never did that or ever would. However, I remember very differently. Have so many kids you can't even take care of them anymore. Just let them take care of each other. Thanks. I hate it. Mess up with my sleep. I was forced to wake up early like normal people supposed to do. As a teenager, I was so exhausted that I thought of suicide only to get to relief. When I moved out, started sleeping more and getting up later, I immediately started to feel much better. My mom called me a WH-ray when she found out I had sex with my boyfriend. As a teenager, guaranteed way to shut down the lines of communication with your son or daughter. The endless beatings and verbal abuse. Have never spanked my child nor screamed at him. Kid is better behaved than me or my siblings ever were because of it too. I will not constantly retell the same stories about embarrassing stuff they did when they were little to their friends and other family. I will not shame them for their sexual feelings or for normal bodily functions. I will not indoctrinate them about the importance of saving money and the evils of redistributing wealth only to turn around and take the $85 they spent 6 months saving. I will not carry forward the racist ideologies held by my dad. That bullshit will die with him. Beat them. I don't plan on having children in the future. But if I did, I wouldn't even dream of touching them in a harmful way. My parents were narcissistic child abusing pricks. There is not a single aspect of their character that I will ever model myself after. If I were to have children, I would treat them with the respect they deserve. I would let them know that they do have value. And teach them to never let anyone make them think any different. The whole because I said so bullshit. I'm not going to do that with my kids. I'll also be more understanding when it comes to when my kids can do things. Me and my mom fight sometimes because she never gives a reason for the shit she does, and I'll do that with my kids because I know how it feels to be confused and want justification. Also, when I'm playing a game or am doing something I can't get out of, she always forces me out of it because she thinks she needs to be priority all the time even if it costs me something. My parents never really felt comfortable talking to me about serious things. Like emotions, sex, big life fears, etc. I felt like I could never tell them anything growing up or ask questions. I am 35 now, but growing up I had so much anxiety and battled depression and just never spoke to anyone about it. If I ever become a parent, I would hope I make my children feel they are in a safe, open environment without judgment so I can help them or assist in finding help. I will never tell my children that feelings aren't important and to think don't feel. This mentally really f***ed me and my sibling up. Made us secretive, anxious and unable to think we could talk to someone about it. We both suffered with anxiety and were constantly told it's all in your head. Just think it through. I wouldn't yell at my child for being depressed. Call them names. Compare their childhood to other people's, saying that since it's better it's great. Make them stand in the living room for 3 hours. Not allowing them to sit down. 30 minutes of their time forcing them to hold a pen out in front of them with no breaks because I care about their feelings. Emotionally blackmail and emotionally abuse them for shit that doesn't even matter. Tell them that they have to be an adult at 14. Which I didn't realize that didn't happen in every household until yesterday. I thought everything they did was normal. They told me that my brain unraveled while they were raising me. I'm sorry for making this huge rant. But I just kinda went off, I guess. I won't force them to kiss, hug, sit on any older male relative's lap or leave them alone with teenage cousins or older uncle who could potentially prey on them. I would explain to them beforehand about unwanted touches. Also, if they do get hurt by pedis, I'd make sure he feels secure in the fact that I would stop associating with those bastards even if they are my relatives. They took my bed frame so that my little sister could use it, but never bought me another one. Even after telling me that they'd get me one. I went on for 4 years sleeping on a mattress on the floor. It took until we moved to another state that my grandma bought me a bed frame and new mattress. I would have understood if we couldn't afford it. But they would constantly talk to me about, oh man, we really need to get you a bed. Huh. And then just nothing. It hurts to be made to feel as if you're not important enough to sleep on a bed like everyone else in the family. Edit. Grammar. Forced me to smile after being yelled at. Because my sad, angry expression made her more angry. Literally had to smile through tears BC I worried what she would do if she got any madder. Also my former stepdad kept saying he was doing a good job parenting. He wasn't. BC when he was a kid his parents beat him in the head with frying pans, which explained so much. Like you want a gold star for not beating me with kitchen appliances? Make them scared to talk to me about anything sexual womanly. My mum just shames me and makes me feel like an idiot if I need help with something. Definitely not a bad mum, but her being more open with me while I was growing up would have definitely helped me when I got into my first sexual relationship. Also, I wouldn't abandon my family for a woman, then add that woman and her hellspawn children above my own. Then blame my children and act like a victim when they don't want to visit me. Looking at you, Dad. Raise them in a controlling cult with no birthdays, holidays, self-esteem or life lessons needed to be a functioning adult. Thanks Jehovah's Witnesses for the shitty 18 years until I could escape. Force them into a religion. I wouldn't brainwash